Hi there. Today we're going to talk a little bit about creating feeds within security analytics. Feeds are a very powerful mechanism within SA. They allow you to effectively enrich any incoming data. Very commonly used for things like threat intelligence, where if you've given a list of indicators, you can add other enrichment tags that will be effectively associated metadata for all the incoming sessions. But you can use it for a lot of other things as well, including business context enrichment. So mapping usernames to their managers or mapping assets to their criticality ratings and their facilities that they reside in. Lots and lots of different use cases for feeds, and it's actually very easy to implement within security analytics. So where do you start with a feed? So first thing we need to do is create a feed. Now, a feed in its simplest form is nothing more from a source standpoint than a comma separated list of values. In the text window here, you can see I've got a few values, a comment at the top where basically I've got an IP address in my first column, I've got a facility, I got a business unit, and then I've got a criticality rating. You can have as many columns as you'd like within security analytics. This is just an idea of a basic feed, which is really what we're going to be talking about today. So given this as a source file, how do I implement that within security analytics? The idea is I want to be able to match anything that's coming in, a log or a packet with that IP address in it, and then I want to tag it with all of this information to help my investigations. So to do so, I come into my security analytics interface. I'm going to go down to the live menu, and I'm going to select feeds. Once I'm in here, I don't have any feeds created yet. Once I'm in here, I'm going to select the plus. And in this case, we're going to do a custom feed. So in this screen, you'll notice the top radio button here. There's two types of feeds effectively, ad hoc and recurrent. Ad hoc is if I just want to import a file from my local file system, which is what I'm going to do in this case. But let's say you had a feed file, a source file, a CSV that is getting updated on a regular basis as information changes within your environment, right? Maybe it's connected into your CMDB, and every time an IP address changes on an asset, you update this CSV file and post it on a web server, something like that. You can point security analytics at the URL and tell it how often to go and reach out and update the feed information. So we're not going to implement a recurring feed today. We're just going to implement a single ad hoc feed. So first thing I do is give it a name. So in this case, I'm going to call this my asset criticality feed. And I'm going to browse to the file, assetcriticalities.csv. That's the CSV we were just looking at. So I've got my CSV loaded. I click next. I can choose which decoders in my environment I want to deploy this to. So feeds do run on the decoder. It happens upon capture. All this stuff is analyzed. So if I have many devices, dozens of devices doing capture in my environment, I do have the choice as to which ones the feeds get deployed to. In this case, I'm just going to select all. And then I get to the definition page. So this is where you have a lot of different options, and we're going to show you two different kinds of feeds. This first one is IP based, right? We want to match everything that matches one of the IPs in the first column and then tag that session with the remaining three columns data. So I'm going to keep this radio button here for right now, where I've defined the type. It's an IP data type. And the only other thing I really have to do at the top here is define which column I want security analytics to look for an IP address in this feed. In this case, it's column number 1. Okay, so column number 1, you'll notice as soon as I select that, this column goes gray. I can no longer make any drop-down modifications here. That's pretty much all you need to do. So define my index column as number 1. If instead of IP addresses, I wanted to tag CIDR blocks, I can do that. All I would have to do is toggle this value right here, which would tell security analytics to treat these values as CIDR. In this case, they're obviously not. They're just single IP addresses, but that option is available. So after you've chosen which column you want security analytics to index off of or search off of effectively, you can see the other 3 columns here. All you have to do is assign metadata values to this column. Now you can meta keys effectively. The precursor here is that the keys should already be created within security analytics. So whatever I want to put this particular value under should exist in your index. We can cover that in a different session, but for right now, let's assume all these values are here, which they are. So the first one I want to do is going to be facility. So I can scroll down in my list of metadata here. This is a full list of metadata available within Security Analytics. Choose facility. If I want, I can just type it in here and it should start to autocomplete. So you can see business unit. And then finally, I want to select criticality. So now, when anything matches the IP address, I should be able to see that the facility meta key has any of these values, business unit, any of these, and the criticality meta key has any of those values. So after I'm finished with that, I can click next, get a little bit of a summary, validate everything is how you'd like it, and then you click finish. After you click finish, you can see a status here. You see the progress bars for all the devices you're deploying it to. In this case, it's complete, happened just like that. And now at this point forward, any traffic or log data that comes into the environment is going to be tagged. That's important to note. It doesn't tag retroactively historical data. It's only this point in time forward because this is a pre-processing mechanism. So what does that look like within Security Analytics? Well, now if I go into the navigation tab, if I want to pull up, let's say, packet data, I've got all my meta keys, but if I scroll down here, I've got those additional meta keys that are now tagged with the values in the columns of my source file. So you can see here I've got my business units, facility, asset criticality, and it just ends up being a really nice way to quickly sift down in the context of what assets mean in this case to the business. So if I only was concerned with assets of a certain criticality or assets from a certain facility, just like any other meta, if I only care about the assets in Seattle, I can drill down in there. You can see the breadcrumb trail, and now I've filtered down to a smaller number of sessions. So that's a generic IP feed. I'm going to quickly show you a different kind of feed that doesn't key on IP address because there's a few other options here. So another common type of feed might be taking any meta key that has usernames associated with them and mapping in things like their manager or their personal business unit. So in this case, I've got 3 columns. I've got a username column, I've got a manager column, and I've got a business unit column. So I'm going to come back into my feed configuration here, and I'm going to create a new feed. Again, it's still a custom feed. This one's going to be called my user feed. Just like before, I'm going to browse to the file, which in this case is users.csv. Choose where I want to deploy this. Now, the big difference is on this page because the first column, the one I want to match on, is no longer an IP data type. Okay, it's a string data type. So I have to tell Security Analytics this is not going to be an IP. I still have to give it an index. But now I have a couple other options. I have effectively 3 more options here. If I want, I can narrow down the service type, which means if I don't want this feed to apply across all protocols, I can give it a specific protocol here. So if I wanted it just to apply against HTTP traffic or just against FTP traffic, I can narrow it down there. Another option is to truncate any domain data type. So in our example, we're not dealing with any meta that has a domain name. But if we were, the truncate domain option says if I have a sort of a multi-level domain like www.example.com, truncate domain means don't treat it as www.example.com, but just match on example.com. And then finally, this is the one big difference. I get to choose one or more meta keys or meta categories that I map back to that particular column, because it's not always the case that there's a single meta key. We might want to match on multiple. So if I want to compare destination user, source user, and username meta, I can add them all here under the callback keys. So that just basically means which meta key do I want to compare this first column against before I determine whether or not it's a match. And then once I determine it's a match, similar to the other example, I can input any keys that exist, click next, and deploy it just like I did the first one.